Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr. Today I'm going to do an after action report or recap of the Payoff Pitch tournament that took place in Milwaukee this past weekend. First of all, big thanks to Kurt Berglund from Kurt Berglund's Baseball World. A big shout out to him for hosting the tournament as he did back in October. So I participated in the tournament in October, and and then I also participated in this one. This was the second one, and so I've taken part in both of them now. And so I thought I'd just give you a little quick recap. By the way, he does have a video up. If you want to see his recap of the tournament, I will link that down in the comments below, or the description below, so that you can check that out too. And I encourage you to do that. So a little bit of background on the tournament. Once again, we had six participants, six different teams. We were allowed to take any team that was carded, that had the team carded in Payoff Pitch. So it could be any team, pretty much any team. Payoff Pitch doesn't have every season, but they have many, many seasons. So I had taken the 73 Athletics last time, and I think I finished 1-4. Yeah, I think I finished 1-4. Terrible. My team did terribly. I think my team hitting was like 208 or something like that, and my team ERA was horrible as well. So it was pitching and hitting both just terrible, and that's why I went 1-4. This time around, I decided that I wanted to take a different team, and so I chose the 1980 New York Yankees. I took the 73 A's. I think I mentioned in that video. I have a video that you can watch on that too. Took the 73 A's. That was my birth year. Reggie Jackson. My middle name is actually Jackson. And of course, he played for the Athletics in 73. And he also played for the Yankees in 1980. And in 1980, he had probably one of his best seasons, if not his best season. He had over 300. He had 40 plus homers. He was just a monster that year. So I thought it would be fun to take that team and see what they could do in the tournament. The way the tournament was set up is there was a schedule where we played. The idea was that we would play each team twice for a total of 10 games. That was the plan. Every team would have a 25-man roster and a 4-man pitching rotation. And in order to be a starter in the rotation, that starter had to have pitched 10 games for that team, or started 10 games for that team in that particular season. So that's kind of the setup of it. And I'll give you a little bit more background on my team choices here in a minute. But so there were some other stipulations. The home team would choose whether there was a DH or not, and we would use the fast action cards for base runner advancement in most cases, and for steals also. We did an easier steal system where you didn't have to roll for a jump, but you just cross-reference the steal rating with the catcher's arm, and that would give you the quality to check on the fast action card to see if you were safe or out. So it was a streamlined stealing system. The other stipulations were that a reliever couldn't pitch more than 3 days without having to rest the day, and a reliever couldn't pitch more than 5 outs without having to rest the next day also. But other than that, we were free to make whatever decisions we wanted to make. And so, as I said, I chose the 1980 Yankees, and the 1980 Yankees that year had a 4-man rotation, if you will, of Tommy John, Ron Guidry, Rudy May, and Tom Underwood. Now, Tom Underwood, I think, was their number 3, and Rudy May was their number 4. Louis Tiant was in there too, so he could have been in that rotation as well. But I stuck with Tommy John, Ron Guidry, Rudy May, and Tom Underwood. Interesting thing being they're all left-handed pitchers. Now, Yankee Stadium has the short right field line, which means left-handed hitters have a huge advantage in terms of power to that side. So my thought was, if I had a bunch of left-handed pitchers, then if there were left-handed hitters in the opposing lineup, they would be at a disadvantage because I had left-handed pitchers pitching, and it would somewhat moderate that advantage the power advantage, if you will. So that's kind of what I did just to see if it would work out. And my starting lineups were a little different based on whether I was, of course, whether there was a DH or no DH, but also whether there was a right-handed or left-handed pitcher pitching. Because that year the Yankees had several positions that were maybe not outright platoons, but where a couple of players shared significant playing time. And so my standard lineup, for right-handed pitching was Randolph at second base, Mercer DH, unless there was no DH, Gamble in left field, Reggie in right, Nettles at third, Rupert Jones center field, Bob Watson first base, Rick Cerone catching, and Bucky Dent shortstop. Against the left-handers, the lineup got shuffled a little bit, and then there were some swap outs. So against left-handers, Willie Randolph was leading off still. Watson moved up to the number 2 spot, still playing first base. Soderholm I had at third base in place of Nettles. Reggie was still batting cleanup. Cerone was batting 5th. Dent was batting 6th. Piniella was in left field. Fred Stanley was a DH, and Bobby Brown in center. So against left-handed pitchers, I basically took all of my left-handed hitters out, swapped them out, other than Reggie, for right-handed hitters instead. So there was a little bit of a platoon. But again, as I said, that particular year, all of these players shared significant playing time. So it wasn't like I was having a guy that only had like 10 at-bats in the starting lineup. The relievers that year, I already mentioned Tiant. We had Ron Davis, Doug Bird, Gaylord Perry, believe it or not. I think he was like 41 years old at that point. And Goose Gossage. Rich Gossage was my closer. So that's kind of how things started out. Now, right away in the tournament, we ran into some time issues because I think the very first game, there were a couple of teams that went into extra innings. So my game didn't go into extra innings, but the other two games both went into extra innings. And one of them went like 12 innings or 12 or 13 innings. So that kind of that kind of got us behind schedule early on. Later on, I had an extra inning game, so we didn't make it through the full 10 games. We started at 8:30. We took like a half-hour lunch, kind of in the middle, and then the goal was to be done by 5 o'clock, and we wanted a championship game in there too. So we ended up playing 7 games total, plus the championship. And so here's kind of how my team did in those 7 games, and then overall how my team did. Game 1, I was playing the 1933 Washington Senators, or Nationals, whichever you want to call them. And this is somebody that I had played last year, and they had chosen the 21 Yankees. Again, I haven't got permission to use anybody's name in here, so I'm not gonna call out people. But this is somebody that I played last year. They had the 21 Yankees last year. They went to the championship last year. And this year they took the 33 Senators. And Tommy John had some concerns about even going into the tournament because he did not strike out very many batters. He was their number 1 starter. He had the most starts of any of the starting rotation. But he was a contact pitcher, did not strike very many batters out. And so on his card, if you're familiar with Payoff Pitch, he had a lot of in-play chances, hardly any tough chances. On the flip side, he didn't have any wheelhouse chances either. He did have a ballpark chance on his card, but no wheelhouse chances. So he didn't allow home runs, but he definitely pitched to contact. And I was fearing that would come back and bite me in the butt at some point. And sure enough, in game 1, I saw a little bit of that. So I saw a little bit of that. So even in the first inning, he allowed 2 runs in the first inning. He allowed a run in the second inning. He allowed a run in the fourth inning. So there's 4 runs in the first 4 innings. Fortunately, my offense was pretty good against Monty Weaver. And against Monty Weaver, we scored a couple of runs in the second. Rupert Jones had a triple that scored Greg Nettles, and then Watson singled him in. So there were 2 runs right there. And then in the fifth, I scored a couple more runs. Tommy John actually hit a double, which was shocking because of a rare play. He hit a double. Willie Randolph singled him home and then stole second. And then with 2 outs, Reggie Jackson got intentionally walked. But then Greg Nettles doubled to score another run. So the game was tied after 5 innings, 4-4. So even though Tommy John kind of had a rough, didn't have the greatest outing, 6 innings, he allowed 7 hits, 4 earned runs. He only struck out 1. He walked 2. We still were in decent shape because the score was still tied, turning it over to the relievers. And so even into the ninth, the score was still tied 4-4. And in the ninth, Bucky Dent led off with a double. Bobby Mercer pinch hit for Tommy John and singled. So we had runners on the corners with nobody out, and we could not score them. Willie Randolph hit a short fly ball to left. Then Gamble hit a short fly ball to left. And then Reggie grounded out to first base to end the inning. And then in the bottom of the ninth, we turned things over to Tiant. And Sam Rice led off with a triple. So right away we had a guy on third with no outs. The winning run on third with no outs. So I intentionally walked the next 2 batters, brought the infield in, and Joe Cronin hit an easy base hit to win the game. So I lost game 1 5-4 in a nail biter that could have gone either way. But even still, I didn't feel terrible because even though Tommy John didn't have a great start, my offense was decent enough to keep me in the game. So game 2 was against the 1994 Expos, and I was visiting again, but they chose to use the DH this time. So I have my DH lineup in there. I was facing off against Henry, and I had Ron Guidry pitching. This wasn't Ron Guidry's amazing year, but he's still pretty decent in 1980. And Guidry was great. He was just great. He went 8 innings. He only allowed 1 earned run, 6 hits, struck out 5. Everything I could have asked for, he did. And on the offense, we scored 2 runs right in the first inning. Reggie had an RBI double, and Bucky Dent had an RBI double in the first inning. And then in the 6th, Reggie hit a solo shot to put me up 3-1, and that's what ended up being the final score. Gossage made things a little interesting because he hit Cliff Floyd to lead off the inning, struck out Moises Alou and Larry Walker. Barry singled, so runners on the corners with 2 outs, and then he struck out Bell to end the inning. So he struck out the side to get the save. So we won game 2 3-1. Game 3 was against the 79 Cubs. And I had Rudy May going that game. And once again, Rudy May was great. The only run he allowed was a Bill Buckner solo home run. So he went 8 innings, allowed 8 hits, only 1 earned run, struck out 6. Meanwhile, I scored again in the first inning. Reggie had an RBI single in the first. Oscar Gamble hit a solo homer in the third to put me up 2-1. And then in the 8th, Reggie had a solo homer in the 8th to put me up 3-1. So I had a 3-1 lead going into the 9th inning, and brought in Gossage to close things out, and he couldn't do it. He walked Henderson to lead things off, and then Willie Randolph booted the next ball. Gossage did strike out Dillard, but then DeJesus hit a single that scored both runners. Oh, because the error was a throwing error. It was two base errors, so there were runners on second and third. And so DeJesus singled both of them in to tie the game. Gossage ended up striking out the side again, oddly enough. So we went to extra innings. And In extra innings, I mean, I brought in Tiant again to eat some innings in extra innings, and he actually pitched pretty well this time. He went 3 innings, didn't allow a run, only allowed one single and walked one. And finally, in the 12th, I was home this time. Finally, in the 12th, I loaded the bases, and Fred Stanley hit an RBI single to score the winning run. So I won that one 4-3 in 12 innings. Game 4, I was facing off against the 69 Cubs, and I was visiting team again. And Underwood was pitching for me, and once again, starting pitching gave me 8 strong innings, only 1 earned run. Underwood only allowed 4 hits this time. In fact, Selma was pitching for the Cubs. Both pitchers had 4-hit shutouts going into the 8th inning, I believe. Yes, both pitchers had 4-hit shutouts going into the 8th inning. And then in the 8th, Bucky Dent let off with a walk. I had Underwood sacrificed because I wasn't sure I wanted to take him out yet, because he only allowed 1 earned run so far, or actually none at that point. He had a shutout going at that point. So he sacrificed to get the runner in scoring position. Randolph flied out, so I thought I was going to screw that chance. But then Gamble followed with a double to score my first run, and Reggie had a 2-run homer to follow that. So I was up 3-0. They scored in the bottom of the 8th. They scored 1 run in the bottom of the 8th to make it 3-1. But that's where things ended. Gossage was in for another a save again. So he pitched a scoreless 9th to pick up the save in Game 4. So at this point, I was 3-2, or excuse me, 3-1 after 4 games. So I was in a very good position. The Senators were 4-0 at this point, though. I was 3-1. All of the other teams were like 1-3, I believe. So I was feeling pretty confident about myself. And then Game 5, I faced the 2016 Cubs. There are a lot of Cubs teams in the tournament. There were the 79 Cubs, the 69 Cubs, and the 2016 Cubs, were 3 of the 6 teams. And I had actually faced the 2016 Cubs in the last tournament. Not the same player, though, if that makes sense. And I was home again. I was facing Arrieta, and Arrieta basically shut me down. I had Tommy John on the mound again, and this time he did exactly what I was expecting to have happen. And the Cubs scored 5 runs. So he went 6 innings, allowed 5 runs. They scored a run in the 3rd. They scored 3 runs in the 5th. Just a bunch of base hits. And then they scored another run in the 6th. It's just a bunch of base hits because of all of his in-play chances. I had a little flicker of hope in the 4th when Rupert Jones and Bob Watson went back-to-back solo shots. And so at that point, it was I was up 2-1, but then they had their 3-run 5th inning, and I was down 4-2, and then I was down 5-2, and that's where the game ended up finishing out, was 5-2. So with the loss, I dropped down to 3-2. Finally, we had, or not finally, but then the 6th game, I was playing the 69 Cubs again, and I was back to Guidry facing Hands for Chicago. And Guidry actually started off pretty well, but then he had a bad 4th inning. There was a walk, a single, fielder's choice, fly out to center. So I thought, 2 outs. I thought I'd get out of it. But then they had 3 straight singles. And so they scored 3 runs in the 4th. I had scored 1 run in the 1st, another Reggie Jackson RBI single. I scored 2 in the 5th, thanks to back-to-back doubles from Gamble and Reggie. So we were tied. And then in the 6th, he once again had a couple singles and a walk to load the bases, and then had a sac fly to score the 4th run to take the lead 4-3. And they would score a couple more runs in the 9th. Tiant pitched well, a couple innings of relief. But then in the 9th, Tiant allowed the first 2 runners to single. And Davis came in and allowed them to score. So that game I lost 6-3. So all of a sudden I was 3-3. So heading to the seventh game, we had the Senators, who were 5-1 at that point. So they were a lock to be in the championship game. And then we had three teams that were all bunched together, 3-3, if you will. Actually, the Expos were 4-2 at that point. So the Expos were 4-2, and then we had the 2016 Cubs and me were 3-3. And so I was playing the Expos, and the Cubs were playing 2016 Cubs were playing the 69 Cubs, maybe, I think. And basically I had to win the game, obviously. And if I would have won, then I would have, I had lost to the 2016 Cubs. So if he won, he would have probably beat me in head-to-head. But I had beat the Expos. So, and I was playing them again. So I just needed to win the game, basically, give myself a shot, regardless of what happened with the Cubs, with the 2016 Cubs. And right away, they had Hill on the mound. I had a 6-run second inning. I scored 6 runs in the second inning. Gamble had a bases loaded, bases clearing double. And I'd already scored a couple runs by then. And Reggie had hit a solo shot to lead off the second inning. So I batted around in the second. I took a 6-0 lead. I scored another run in the fourth. So I was up 7-0 at that point. And I was like, this is smooth sailing. Smooth sailing at this point. I had Rudy May on the mound. And so it was smooth sailing until the fifth. And then in the fifth, May ran into some trouble and allowed 5 straight hits. And they scored 4 runs. So they cut the lead more than half. Still up 7-4. And heading into the seventh, turning it over to the relievers, I went to Davis. I went to Davis. And they scored 3 more runs in the seventh to tie it up. They tied it up in the seventh inning, 7-7, after I was pretty much confident that I won the game already. So I was pretty dejected at that point because I saw the lead just slipping away. And I was home. In the eighth, I turned things over to Gaylord Perry, and he pitched a clean 8th inning. And then bottom of the 8th, with 2 outs, Cerrone hit an RBI double to give me the lead. Bucky Dent followed with another double to score him. And so I scored 2 runs in the 8th inning, bottom of the 8th. And so in the top of the 9th, I turned things over to Gossage again, and he pitched a perfect 9th inning to give me the 9-7 win. So I won Game 7 and took a 4-3 record. Unfortunately for me, the 2016 Cubs also won. So we had 3 teams tied at 4-3. And so because I had beat the Expos twice, the Expos had beat the 2016 Cubs, and the Cubs had beat me, it went to run differential. And the Expos and me were even, had an even run differential, and the 2016 Cubs had a plus, I don't remember, it was like +9 or something like that, because they had a couple blowouts. And so they made it into the championship game. And I stuck around, watched the championship game, and they ended up beating the 33 Senators to take the championship. So that's kind of how things wrapped up. There were door prizes, which was very gracious of Kurt to have those available. There were, for the champion and runner-up, they got to choose a Payoff Pitch print season that was available there, and I believe Joe Bryan donated those. I think that's what Kurt said, and so those were available. But overall, it was just a totally fun day. It's, again, only the second time I've really had a chance to play in a tournament like that. So I had a blast. I had a real blast. And I guess overall, my star hitters and pitchers, Reggie did everything I could have asked of him. He hit 333. He was 9 for 27 on the day, drove in 9 runs in 7 games. He had 4 homers in those 7 games. 1.271 OPS, so he was amazing for me. Bucky Dent and Bob Watson. Bucky Dent was 11 for 25. Watson was 11 for 26. So they both hit over 400 for me and had OPSs of over 1. And I had a lot of other players that hit pretty well too. On the downside, I had Gamble only hit 167, though he had some clutch hits at certain times. He had 3 doubles. Randolph hit 167. Gamble hit 200. Nettles only hit 154, and Cerrone only hit 107. And my pinch hitting was terrible. Piniella and Brown, they actually, I think, started one game, but they both went 0 for 6, didn't have a hit. Soderholm went 0 for 3. So I had a couple, that were not that great. As a team, I hit 254 with a 305 on base, a 410 slugging, a 716 OPS. On the pitching side, even though Gossage blew 1 save, I ended up winning that game anyway. He still had 3 saves, didn't allow any earned runs because the 2 runs he allowed were because of an error. Gaylord Perry had 4 innings of relief overall, only allowed 1 hit in those 4 innings. Underwood, as a starter, allowed 4 hits in his start through his 8 innings. And then Guidry and May both had 2 starts, and they had a 3.21 ERA. Tommy John, 6.75 ERA, allowed 16 hits in 12 innings, 9 earned runs. So looking back, I probably should not have had him as my ace, which I kind of knew that going in. I had a feeling, and it kind of ended up panning out. Now, the interesting thing is, as a team, my pitchers only allowed 1 home run in those 7 games total. Meanwhile, I hit 7. 4 of those from Reggie. But I hit 7 homers. I had 17 doubles, 1 triple, and 7 homers, and I only allowed 10 doubles, 3 triples, and 1 homer. So the batting average of my opponents was 254, which is pretty close to my average. Well, it's actually, my average was 254. Or excuse me, theirs was 260. Slightly better. They had a slightly better on base, 314 compared to 305, but my slugging was 410 compared to their 335. So my pitching was keeping them to singles mostly, which made the difference in a few of those games. And again, they only allowed 1 homer, and I hit 7. Likewise, on the fielding side of things, I only made 1 error total in those 7 games, and my opponents made 7. So my opponents made 7 errors in those 7 games. I only made 1. So my defense was backing me up too. So overall, I feel a lot better about the way I played this time, or the way the team played, I should say. The team just felt like they were never out of any of the games. I never really got totally blown out. Yes, I lost by 5-2, 6-3. So a couple of games I was down 3 runs, but a lot of the games were very close, within a run or 2. So I always felt like I was in it, even if I was losing. So, and I felt confident that my team could score. So that was the other good thing. Again, overall, a great experience. I highly encourage you, if you haven't played in person in a tournament like that, to do so. Really highly encourage that. And that's where we will leave things. Check out Kurt Berglund's video. I want to thank thank Kurt, of course. Thank everybody that was in the tournament. It was a great experience. There were no arguments or anything like that. Even if the rules weren't necessarily the way somebody played in their solo time, we didn't have any issues at all. And everybody was just there to have fun. And I had a great time, and I'm sure they did too. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any comments on anything I said, or if you've played in a face-to-face tournament before. And be watching for the next Payoff Pitch tournament. I'm sure there will be one. And until next time, have a great evening.